Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 287. Death Battle. The moment their eyes met, Lenivus suddenly ducked and rolled forward. Clang! A tarot card, with an angel and trumpet, shot out sharply like a dagger, embedding itself into the wall of the sewer, and its position was at the same height as Lenivus's neck just moments before. Clang! 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 Lenivus either rolled, jumped to his side, or threw himself forward, nimbly avoiding the three cards that came in succession with abnormal agility. Their collision with the walls, slabs, and concrete echoed like metal striking a wall. Meanwhile, out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the man in the clown mask was following him closely, not much slower than he was. In his hand was a thick stack of cards as he launched them with great familiarity and skill. On the surface of an approaching card was a sun with 5 facial features. With his left hand, Lenivus propped himself up against the wall and leaped into the air, drastically changing his course. At that moment, he heard a swishing sound before suddenly feeling a sharp pain in his ankle. He launched 2 cards? One arrived slightly late and was aimed in the direction I was escaping in. Can he foresee my movements? The moment he landed on the ground, Lenivus endured the pain and rolled once again. Clang! Another tarot card embedded itself into his original position, resonating constantly in response to the impact. It was only then that Lenivus noticed a card deeply embedded in his right ankle. The card depicting stars, water containers, and holy water stained in red. So. Lenivus didn't even have the luxury of time to think or treat his injuries. One after another, the cards turned into seemingly sharp flying daggers, shooting at different parts of his body. Very soon, the injuries on his right leg and chest, and the remnant effects from the hole in his chest, as well as the prior demigod-level clash caused this Sequence 9 marauder to turn sluggish. This was in contrast to the nimbleness and speed that marauders were known for. Pow! He sent a card flying, but a deep laceration tore through his wrist, one that kept bleeding profusely. The Nighthawks and the military will be coming soon. I can't delay any longer. At this moment, Lenivus's mind was very clear. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks and stopped dodging, allowing a card depicting the devil to strike him squarely in the neck. In almost an instant, the cards sticking out from his body were sent flying. The hideous wounds on his neck, right chest, wrist, and ankle were all squirming madly, sprouting one meat tendril after another in disgusting shapes. On his skin, numerous small goosebumps appeared. These goosebumps had a metallic tint to them as if they had turned into a set of armor. Clang! A tarot card was shot over, but it was deflected by the fine goosebumps. With bloodshot eyes, Lenivus stared at the clown who had put away his cards after coming to a halt. He said, half laughing and half mocking, "No matter what, after being tormented by a deity, one will always get something in return." Before he could finish his words, he had already jumped over the polluted waters in the canal with his left foot, throwing himself at the enemy opposite him. As if expecting this, Klein stepped to the side, pulled his left hand out of his pocket, clenched it into a fist, and threw it at Lenivus's temple. Bam! Lenivus swung his elbow sideways and raised his forearm, accurately hitting his opponent's fist. The explosive force surged like a torrential tide, causing Klein's body to move from the impact as he staggered a little. Pa! 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 Crisp explosive blasts sounded in Klein's ear. Punches, each heavier and faster than the last, constantly reflected into his eyes. The flurry of attacks made him seem to forget to maintain his balance. He staggered and fell to the side, then, with the support of his left elbow, he rolled in a different direction. Smack! 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 Bang! 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 Lenivus's punches and kicks came quickly and furiously, almost hitting Klein quite a few times, but thanks to his exaggerated balance and movements that defied common sense, he managed to dodge successfully. At times, he would be on the wall, and at other times, on the ground. It was as though he was performing an acrobatic act. He appeared very calm without the slightest bit of impatience. It was as though he had decided to drag out the battle as long as possible until the Nighthawks and the military arrived. And once there were any signs of Lenevis's attempting to escape, he was hell-bent on pestering him and not give him an opportunity to do so. Pa! Lenevis's punch forced Klein to use the rebound from the wall to fly back into the air, and as for himself, he didn't hesitate to turn around and flee towards another tunnel. The moment Klein's toes touched the ground, his body shot out like a cannonball as he pounced straight for Lenevis's back. At that moment, an image appeared in his mind. It seems as if Lenevis has no bones. I should force him to twist his upper body and land a punch on his body. This was a clown's intuition. Without any doubts or hesitation, Klein took the initiative to reduce his subsequent strength. With a smacking sound, he still threw himself forward, but it was much weaker than he expected. Gotcha! With a jarring noise, Lenevis twisted his upper body suddenly while his legs remained immobile. His face faced backward as his toes pointed forward. In such a terrifying scene, Lenevis threw a punch towards Klein's head. The force of the punch was so strong that even the air produced an explosive boom. Boom! His fist hit nothing but air, and his fist was still 20 or 30 centimeters from Klein's face. The winds that stirred from the punch blew through Klein's hair, but he didn't take the opportunity to attack the enemy. Instead, he croaked a single word in ancient Hermes. Crimson! A charm? Lenevis scrunched his face as he immediately jumped to the side in a bid to dodge the impending attack. However, Klein had yet to throw out the charm. Instead, he clenched his left fist tightly and followed in the direction of Lenevis. He similarly threw himself to the side and rolled on the ground as well, causing the distance between them to only widen slightly. It was a bluff. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, the highly raised corners of the clown's mouth were clearly reflected in his eyes. There was also a dark red flame which had unknowingly ignited in the clown's left fist. Lenevis's gaze immediately froze. A light crackling sound entered his ears, and a calm, tranquil feeling emanated instantly, enveloping him and Klein. What is he trying to do? He wants both of us to be affected at the same time, to allow for the Nighthawks and military to rush here in time. Lenevis's eyelids drooped heavily, and the fatigue and weakness he had been suppressing began to rear their heads uncontrollably. He did his best not to fall asleep, hoping to rely on the uniqueness of his body to endure through the most intense period of the charm's slumbering effects. As for Klein, he didn't choose to resist at all and quickly entered a deep slumber. However, whenever he fell asleep unnaturally, he would instinctively wake up. This was the unique thing about him when fighting mediumship and dream invasions. This was the reason why he had been lucky enough to escape from the hands of Madame Scherenbach and Tingen. In the fight just now, after throwing his cards proved ineffective, he immediately took out the slumber charm and gripped it tightly in his palm, waiting for the opportunity to affect himself and his enemy. In just a split second, he forcibly broke free from the abnormal state of mind in his dream. The figure of the staggering Lenevis was clearly reflected in his eyes. Phew! Klein suddenly became very calm, as though what was before him was nothing but a target. He took a deep breath, turned his waist, and pulled back his shoulder before thrusting his fist forward with all his strength. Bam! Gotcha! His fist landed ruthlessly at Lenevis's throat, breaking his bones and splattering his flesh. Lenevis took 2 steps back and leaned against the wall. That intense pain finally allowed him to extricate himself from the slumbering effects, but the fine iron-colored goosebumps on his body were all gone. After Klein's punch landed, he reached into his pocket with his left hand and pulled out 2 cards. So! The 2 cards each stabbed into an eye as scarlet liquid gushed out. Lenevis surprisingly endured the pain without letting out a tragic cry. Instead, he abruptly threw himself forward in a bid to make his last stand. Klein didn't take advantage of the situation to attack. Having long expected this, he turned his body to the side and took a step back. Right on the heels of that, while seizing the moment when Lenevis's fell forward, he took 2 steps and arrived behind him. He reached out with his arms and grabbed his enemy's neck. Gotcha! Klein's arms exerted force, and he suddenly turned around, twisting Lenevis's neck. After doing all of this, he took 2 steps back and looked at his enemy. With the card embedded in him, Lenevis looked ahead weakly as he slumped to the ground. At the same time, he was very confused and asked in a staccato manner, "Why do you want to kill me?" With his clown mask on, Klein stared at his archenemy and replied indifferently, "No." Reason? No. With his eyes wide open, Lenevis collapsed to the ground in the sewers, unable to accept his fate. Finally, his breathing came to a stop. At that moment, Klein, who seemed to be extremely calm, suddenly stepped forward, tightened his right leg, and with all his strength, kicked him in the head. Bam! His neck, which was already badly mutilated, could no longer bear the pressure and was sent flying like a rubber ball. It slammed heavily into the wall, creating a red and white patch. Upon seeing this scene, Klein suddenly crouched down. Ha ha! Ha 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 ha! He laughed crazily with a suppressed voice. The clown mask looked so very happy. The corners of those raised lips, the bright red nose, and that white face wore a very happy expression. Ha 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 ha! Ha! Klein laughed so much that he went out of breath. His laughter was more jarring than crying. After a few seconds, he finally calmed down. He slowly straightened his body and winked with his left eye at the darkest part of the sewer. Then, he smirked and muttered to himself, "Captain! Look, we've saved Lone once again." Droplets of liquid quietly slid down and landed on his collar. At that moment, he felt that his clown potion had been digested completely.